Hola.
TikTok just keeps recommending me books and I want to read them. So I picked 4 books that caught my attention. I read them and I want to give you my opinion on those books. This is my second video doing booktok recommendations. If you want to watch my other video, it's gonna be here. So for some reason, the books that I picked turned out to have similar topics. We talk about the same things, like the meaning of life, and there's a lot of death. So if that's something that might trigger you, consider yourself warned. So the first book that I'm going to be talking about is The Metamorphosis. Let's start with some author and book details. So Franz Kafka was a short story writer and novelist born on July 3rd, 1883 in Prague, Czechia. The Metamorphosis book was published in 1915 when Kafka was 32 years old. Kafka died in 1924 at 41 years old, which is kind of young. So what is the book about? Here we go. The book is about this dude called Gregor Samsa. One day he wakes up. He looks at himself and he realizes that he turned into a roach. So he's like, oh my god, I must be dreaming. This is a nightmare. Kind of funny, but really don't. Let me go back to sleep again. And when I wake up, I'm gonna be human because this is just a dream. He does that and then he wakes up again and he realizes that he is still a roach. His boss, who is a psycho by the way, freaks out when he doesn't see Gregor Samsa at work. So he decides, instead of, I don't know, texting him, I'm gonna go to his house and demand why he's not at work. So he does that and then he goes there and he realizes that Gregor had turned into a roach. His whole family is now scared and repulsed. And now that Gregor turned into a roach, his family doesn't want to take care of him. So now that Gregor couldn't help them, they're like, oh my god, you're a burden. You need to get the out. Which I found weird because for me, taking care of a roach doesn't seem like a hard work at all. Just make him like a little fishbowl. Create him like a little house. I don't know. Taking care of a roach cannot be as hard as taking care of like a shark. Because you need a whole ocean for him. You see what I'm saying? I don't understand why his family was like, oh my god, we cannot take care of a roach. You have roaches in your house for free. And now you cannot actually take care of one. You see what I'm saying? And he's your family. Piece of shit. So the writing style of the book is very sad. It's also a little bit poetic and also a little bit subliminal in the sense that you have to sometimes read in between the lines, because when you're reading the book you realize that the story is not about him turning into a roach, but it's very much about how people don't want nothing to do with you when they cannot benefit from you. So what it was given loss of humanity. It was given when people can't use you, they will dispose you. It was giving Papa Roach. It was giving Wally, and also it was giving a cucaracha. Should you read this book? Yes. If you are curious to see how much more disgusting human beings can be from a literal roach, this is the book for you. Did it slay? It slayed, but in a sad way. You know, it wasn't slayed like, yes, cunty, whatever. It slayed like, oh, in a depressive type of way. I give it a 7 out of 10. Okay, so our next book, it's called No Longer Human. Author and book details. Osamu Dazai, whose real name was Chuji Tsushima, was a Japanese author and novelist born in June 19, 1909. Most of his work was a reflection of his own life. No Longer Human was published in 1948 when Dazai was 38 years old. That same year, he committed... So what is the book about? The book is divided in 3 parts. The first part is when he's a kid. Second part is when he's a teenager. And the third part is when he's a young adult. And it tells the story of a man that from a very young age, he decides that he needs to put on a mask to please people and make other people laugh. Like the title implies, no longer human. So with each passing year, you see how he becomes less and less human. Okay, so the writing style is very easy to comprehend. It feels like a diary or a journal, and the author doesn't use hard words to understand. So that's why it's very easy to read. That being said, this book is very hard to read. It's easy to comprehend, but it's hard to read. Without spoiling anything, the main character, MC, goes through a very traumatic event, which ends up affecting his adult life. He becomes kind of like a very depressed bum, and he wants to off himself. And you feel bad for him because you see him kind of like throwing his life away. But then he starts talking about women. And the way he talks about women, the way he refers to women, made this book so much more hard to read for me because I am a woman. So like I started to not being able to feel bad for him anymore. Don't get me wrong. I hear his story. Like I don't want to hear nobody saying like, oh my God, you're minimizing his trauma. No, I understand what happened to him and I understand that it was something bad. I get it. But at the same time, I don't like him. Just because he went through something traumatic doesn't mean that I have to like the person he has become. I'm sorry that that happened to him, but at the same time, I don't like how he talks about women. After a while, I just wanted the book to be over.
Let's hear what you got.
All right. Well, these lips.
Wrap it up. Exit that way. Thank you.
Despite him talking about women in such a disgusting way, because there's no other way to put it, it was just disgusting. He mentions that he is 27 years old. And I found that so interesting because they don't say that in the book, but I understood that at the end of the book, he finally ends his life. I'm not saying the book is about this, but it just made me think of this. There's a whole numerology conspiracy thing going around the number 27. Not only 27, but every year that equals 9. That's why you have the famous Club 27. And it's because in numerology, or at least that's what they say, when you turn an age that equals 9, you complete a cycle, like a life cycle. Again, this is like a conspiracy theory, I don't know, but I just found it interesting that of all the ages, the author chose 27. When I looked more like into numerology thing, the number 9 is very hush-hush because it's like a bad number or whatever. But I don't know. This is just a thing that popped into my head when I read it, and I thought I would share it to see if anybody else thought of it as well when they read the book. What it was giving. It was giving Joker origin story. And also it was giving Parasite, like a literal parasite. Should you read this book?
No. It's a no for me. No. It's just a no.
I'm being honest. For me, no. Like, I don't understand why this book is so popular on booktok. Maybe it's because it's a very short book, or maybe it's because there's a literal anime character named after the author. I don't see a reason for me to tell somebody, hey, you should really read this book. Like, you will love it. Like, for me, it's a no. How much I give it?
It is so bad, I want to give you a 0, but that's not possible. So I give you a 1.
So the next book I'm going to be talking about is called The Death of Ivan Ilyich. Leo Tolstoy was a Russian author, regarded one of the greatest authors of all time. He was born on September 9, 1828. He is best known for his works Anna Karenina and War and Peace. The Death of Ivan Ilyich was published in 1886, and Tolstoy was 58 years old when it was published. What is the book about? Mr. Ivan starts to live his life according to what society is expecting from him. So towards his death, he starts thinking, what about what I want? But at this point, it's a little bit too late. He's like 2 days away from dying. He dies at age 45. So remember earlier when I told you about the whole 27 conspiracy numerology theory? This character dies at age 45. 4 plus 5 is 9.
That's suspicious. That's weird.
I am in my conspiracy theory era. The writing style, very short, clear, and it's easy to understand. It was giving realness, if I'm being very honest. It was giving, this is literally how life works. It was giving, sometimes we give ourselves to work and to other people. We don't enjoy ourselves. We don't enjoy our life, which is sad. And then we die. Should you read it? Yes, you should definitely read it. If you want to see a perspective of life and death, I feel like this book is very, very good to read. Did it slay? Definitely slay. I give it an 8 out of 10. Next book. It's called The Picture of Dorian Gray. This one is very famous on BookTok. She's famous. Some author and book details. Mr. Oscar Wilde was an Irish poet born in October 16, 1854. He was known for, and I quote, his wit, his flamboyance, and his trials and jail sentence for homosexual acts. Picture of Dorian Gray was published in 1890 when Mr. Wilde was 36 years old. He died 10 years later at age 46. The book is about this beautiful young man named Dorian Gray, and suddenly, after having a conversation with some other dude, he realizes, oh my god, I'm not gonna be young and beautiful forever. It's gonna fade. Oh my god. Crisis, right? And he's like, I need to do something. So he decides to sell his soul to the devil in return for eternal youth. He remains young, and the picture of him starts to get old. When I say he sold his soul to the devil, it's tricky here. Because in the book, it's never fully explained that he sold his soul to the devil. Also, like, you assume that that's what happens. And also the people around him that are getting old and notice that he's not getting old start saying things like that. Like, oh my god, he sold his soul to the devil. Because how else he could remain young and everybody's old and this and that, right? But I feel like we, as readers of the book, we got robbed. The scene where Dorian sells his soul never really happens. It's more like Dorian is like, oh my god, I'm gonna turn old. I wish I remained young. He makes a wish to the air. And then suddenly, his wish comes true. I mean, I'm not an expert in selling souls. Like, I don't know that much about the topic of selling souls. But I would imagine that it's a little bit more complicated. I thought it was more like you have to make an offering to a volcano. I never thought it was as simple. It's like, oh my god, let me just make a wish and then boom, your soul is sold. Your wish came true. Like, what the f? Now, maybe in modern times, maybe if you want to sell your soul, it will be a little bit more upgraded in the sense like, maybe you don't have to make that offering to the volcano. Maybe you just need to list it on Facebook Marketplace or in Craigslist or something like that. Because I would imagine that the soul people... the people buying souls would keep up with the times. Would think it's something more upgraded and it includes technology like that. Buying on eBay will make sense. But just wishing for something and then boom, your soul is sold. I want to be a vampire millionaire. You see, it didn't happen. So how is it that in the book he's like, oh my god, I want to be young and beautiful. And boom. I just didn't like that. And then that's another thing. If you're gonna sell your soul, why would you sell your soul at such a low price? You could have asked for a superpower, teletransportation superpower, plus be young and beautiful. But just eternal youth seems a little low for me. I was like doing that trade, you know, give me a few superpowers, give me money, give me this, give me that, and eternal youth. But just for eternal youth, devil got that soul at a very low price, in my opinion. That's another thing. I feel like Dorian Gray was born too early, because if he was born in this day and era, he could have just got his Botox and his fillers and then sell his soul for something else. Maybe he would have won like a private jet. So now the writing style, it's so beautifully written. So much elegance, so much opulence, so much high class. It's like haute couture. Very much
Star quality.
The author just had a way with words. A true poet. It was given Narcissus. It was given Mirror, Mirror on the Wall, who's the prettiest of them all. Dorian was given Leo. Like, I thought he was gonna be a Leo man. It was given Mother Gothel from Rapunzel. And also it was giving closeted love from the painter. He was in love with Dorian, girl. Like, I thought the book was gonna develop into, you know, a little bit of romance. But kind of didn't. It turned out quite the opposite without spoiling anything. That man was in love with Dorian. And I really believe that. Should you read it? Yes. Even though Lord Henry was getting me a little bit annoyed, I was like, can you shut up? Because he took so much time talking. A fucking monologue of Lord Henry talking about the beauty of the sky. 3 pages. Like, girl, I don't care. Also, I was annoyed about how many times we have to read about how beautiful Dorian is. Like, girl, I get it. He's beautiful. He's perfect. He's like a Greek god. Give me the plot. Give me the story. All that time that Mr. Oscar Wilde took writing about Dorian Gray's beauty, he could have taken that time and write the scene of how the selling of the soul happened, because that's what I wanted to know. Even though that happened, you should read it. Yes, of course. Did it slay? Of course it slay. I give it a 9 out of 10. Of all the books, if I have to recommend just one, I feel like I'm in between the death of Ivan and in between Dorian Gray. I'm gonna choose Ivan. So yeah, those were the books that I decided to read. So if you have any recommendations for me, you can let me know and I will very much read them, okay? So thank you for watching and bye!